welcome back to my channel. We are going to do kind of a chatty style video. I'm going to get ready, but we're going to be discussing, is social media to blame for overspending? Mainly cosmetics. That's what we're focusing on in this video. This is kind of a part 2 to the video I uploaded where I talked about, why we feel compelled to buy palettes again and again that we already own. Palettes with similar color stories, that kind of thing. So this is kind of a follow-up to that. So I'm gonna do my makeup and we will be discussing my thoughts on why I think social media is primarily to blame for this. And if you're somebody that's trying to do a no-buy, I can give you some tips that I've heard other people talk about, some things that have helped me when I try and lower the amount of money that I'm spending on makeup and just things in general. But yeah, if that sounds interesting, stick around. If you're new, welcome. Thank you so much for being here. Make sure you subscribe so you can come back. And let's jump into the video. And I will try and remember to link everything that I'm using down below. I'm not going to talk about the products per se. If I forget, just shoot me a comment. I have small kids and sometimes I forget to go back and add to my descriptions. I get the videos uploaded and do all of those things and then forget to go back. So if something's missing, just shoot me a comment and I will add it, because it's not that I'm being lazy. I just genuinely forget. So we're going to go in. I was thinking about this morning because the way like commercials, and I use the word commercial loosely because most people don't have cable anymore, it seems like. I mean, I know my husband and I don't. We have quite a few streaming services, Hulu, Prime, Disney Plus. I had, what is it? Is it Chiller? The Shudder? It used to be Chiller on DirecTV. Shudder, like all of the things. I had cable when I was smaller, lived with my grandparents. My mom was going back to school. And then when we moved, we had, we tried to do the antenna. We live in Arizona, very close to the Mexican border. So needless to say, most of the stations coming through were Spanish. And then we ended up getting DirecTV because we lived out in super rural area where we couldn't get cable. If you live like in Yuma, you can get cable, but it's not super cheap. They try and advertise the cable is cheap. When you get, the equipment and it's all said and done, it's like $100, which is what we pay like for all of our streaming. I mean, my parents pay for a couple, we pay for a couple, so it's cost effective. So the way commercials are presented is different. When you had cable years ago, there, were target audiences. So like Nickelodeon, Disney, generally if you're watching those channels, there was a lot of kid commercials because you're watching kids programming. So they know there's going to be kids watching, therefore they're going to target the products. And then like Saturday morning cartoons, this is going to age me a little bit. I will be 40 this year. So just from speaking, we're talking about early, like late 80s, early 90s type of an era. But, Saturday morning cartoons, again, you would see kids commercials and then more adult programming. You would get, the Clorox commercials, the toilet paper commercials, the Downy, the, food, that kind of thing. So there's a target audience certain times of the day with various commercials. So you were not bombarded, try and circle the wagon background. You were not bombarded, let's say, with like Toys R Us all the time. It would depend on time of day, programming that was on, that kind of thing. Whereas now, like my 6-year-old watches kids YouTube, occasionally there'll be an ad here or there, but it's all, all kid stuff all the time. So it's different. And then I feel like like Ozempic, I'm going to use that as an example, is really like trendy right now. So like I'm listening to iHeartRadio upstairs, and I've heard 3 Ozempic commercials before I even came down here when I was doing my skincare in the bathroom. And that's just, you know, on iHeartRadio. So they can be selective. I see a lot of, every once in a while, like on YouTube, I'll see a CoverGirl commercial, but it's generally, you know, HelloFresh, Bones Coffee. And I do feel like our phones are listening, because the commercials that I see come through on my YouTube are very much targeted to what my husband and I are talking about, things that I've seen, you know, because it's looking at an algorithm. So things are very, very targeted. I don't see a whole lot of cosmetics per se. The main one that I see come through on YouTube is like Thrive Cosmetics, which I've never purchased anything from Thrive. I think I have one eye brightener that I got in a subscription box, but I've never purchased from them. But what I do see a lot, like I'm on Instagram a lot. I do watch YouTube. I'm on TikTok. And again, there's an algorithm, like it looks at what you're watching, what, you know, who you're following. And I follow a lot of beauty influencers that are around the same subscriber count. So around between 50,000 and 100,000. So they're all getting the same PR. They do a lot of like indie reviews, most of the ones that I follow. And so when I'm going to use Wicked Widow Beauty, because they have a new palette coming out. They did a collaboration with the movie The Crow. So all of them are all doing, you know, content for it. They're helping promote. They're showing, you know, their PR, blah, blah, blah. So I'm just bombarded with images from Wicked Widow and then the other influencers that have received PR, which happens. Like Fantasy Cosmetica is another one. Most of the people that I follow get PR from them. They also had a new launch. So I've been seeing a ton of Fantasy Cosmetica stuff, which entices me to want to buy. That's why companies send PR, so that influencers can show it. And then you're like, oh, I need that. I'm going to buy it. So, I mean, I know why PR is sent out, and it's because of who I'm following. So instead of seeing, you know, a bunch of Toys R Us commercials, now I, you know, as an adult with my Instagram, I get a flood of, you know, Gourmand Girls, Wicked Widow Beauty, Fantasy Cosmetica, Odin's Eye, because I like a lot of the indie subscriptions, or not subscriptions, the indie, you know, eyeshadow palettes and makeup. So my feed is just, you know, bombarded by that. Now I'm choosing who I'm following. So like if I wanted to do a low buy, I have done it in the past. And I've tried to write down who I unfollow, that way, you know, later on if I decide to turn stuff back on. But I have had to go in and like unfollow all of the brands. And then all of the influencers that I know get PR from said brands, because otherwise I'm just getting flooded. Like right now, the Crow palette, well, it's not just a palette, it's a whole collection, is getting ready to launch from Wicked Widow. So I'm seeing a ton of stuff. Again, Fantasy Cosmetica had a launch. Same thing, you know, when Odin's Eye does a launch, it's just a C, which is no fault to the brand. That's how they sell product and make money. It's kind of interesting to think about. I'm not sure that these indie brands, and there's a reason we didn't have, you know, this insurgent of indie makeup 20 or 30 years ago, because there, you know, social media didn't exist. And there's no way these people could have advertised themselves. But now, you know, with Instagram and TikTok, they can essentially, other than the PR, because I know the PR is not free, the brand pays for that. But other than that, they don't have to pay for much other advertising other than, you know, whatever promo photos they have to do for whatever launch. So it's definitely different, where years ago companies would have had to film a commercial, and even small companies, because I know, like, I lived in Billings, Montana. There was a couple of, like, you know, when the local car dealership would have, you know, a sale, they would run a local commercial so only people in that area would see it, but they were still paying to run a commercial or to put an ad in the newspaper or a flyer like in the white pages, you know, that kind of a thing. So it's definitely different because social media allows people to essentially market themselves, and then you can get flooded with products. And when I've had low buys, I've done the same thing on Amazon, because my Amazon feed is all, you know, smaller influencers, again, in between the 50 and 100,000 subscriber range. And again, they all, you know, get the same products. So my YouTube, I think I said Amazon, my YouTube feed will get bombarded with all of, you know, the stuff that's coming out. So I've had to go into YouTube and unsubscribe from certain channels when I've been trying to do a low buy, just so I'm not bombarded by products. So it's a very different time from, like I said, what I grew up with as a kid, because you actually had commercials on the TV. So if there was a smaller company, they were only able to probably pay for advertisement in their area. And then, like, some stuff, like, I think TYs initially got popular by word of mouth. Like, it was there is a documentary out there on the TY company and how that whole, like, the Beanie Babies blew up. But that, like, they didn't have commercials, and it was kind of interesting how they started out. There was a lot of shady stuff in the business itself, but like, the Beanie Baby blew up by word of mouth. There was no, like, commercials, because at the time that's all there was. So it's interesting to live in an era where we're constantly being bombarded by products. And then you can choose, like, there's people that are not on Instagram. You can choose to not be on social media, and then you're only being bombarded by what you see on the TV. Now, like Prime, I'll use Prime as an example just because I've been watching Sanctuary, the old, I think it was on Sci-Fi. On Prime, generally the commercials on Prime are for other shows or movies, so it's not like they're trying to sell products. Now, Sanctuary is under the, is it Freevee, Freeve? So they sometimes will have commercials, but it's generally like Wayfair. I see some like Uber Eats type commercials. I've seen a few Ozempic commercials on there because that's, again, really trendy right now, but it's not a lot. And it tends to be the same commercials over and over when I'm watching Prime. So again, I'm not being bombarded by as much. And then after a while, like, generally I'll take my phone out when the ads are playing, so I'm not even really watching them. But I feel like with that, I have a little bit more control, because again, I can look at TikTok and then be somebody try and sell me something on there, I guess. But as somebody that goes on Instagram a fair amount during the day, I feel like it's hard to get away from, and it's just because of who I've chosen to follow. I like makeup, so therefore I feel like I get bombarded by a lot. But again, the key to that, like, if I wanted to cut it back, would just be to unfollow people, which sometimes, like, thinking about doing that is a little bit wild and like, oh, but like I said, when I've done it in the past, I've written down, like, if I'm doing a mass unfollow, channels that I want to resubscribe potentially later. And there's been a few times where some of the channels that I follow on YouTube that are all around 50K, because they're all getting the same PR, I have gone through and unfollowed a few a couple of times and then refollowed them later, because it's just, I know, well, like, same thing, they're all on like ColourPop's PR, so then, you know, I get bombarded by color, like it ends up being a lot. So I've had to kind of try and control the amount of information coming at me, because then I just get sucked into the wave where I'm like, feel like I'm being pressured to buy everything. Now, I know the brands are not necessarily trying to cause people to have anxiety, but, you know, it can be a lot of products, especially like this past October where there was so many Halloween palettes being launched. It was a lot and just became overwhelming. So there was a period there between October and November where I think I unfollowed a few people temporarily, just because I was like, this is too much. I can't keep up. I'm reaching, you know, burnout with products. And it's just a lot. So I'm curious what your guys' thoughts are, because like I said, it's definitely different now as far as commercials, how products are pushed. And then if you have cable, then you're being, you know, you get the normal commercials too. But it's interesting because my in-laws and my parents still have DirecTV too. And I go over there and I watch regular TV, seeing the commercials, because it's very different than what gets pushed on social media. So I'm curious to know your guys' thoughts on this, because it's definitely playing a part in, you know, the impulse buy in us, right? So definitely let me know your thoughts. I'm going to finish getting ready, but yeah, I think I'll leave it there so I don't start repeating myself. But yeah, definitely let me know how you guys feel about the social media and the push of products on social media. Definitely very, very curious. So thank you guys so much for being here. Again, make sure you're subscribed if you're not already, and hopefully I will see you in another video very soon. Bye, everybody.